Welcome to Crime Insomnia, where we explore some of the most shocking, disturbing, and thought-provoking true crime cases from around the world. In today's episode, we'll dive into the harrowing and haunting case that shook Poland, the Rakowiska murder. This case involves two young friends, Zuzanna Maksimiuk and Kamil Niedźwiedź, whose relationship would take a dark and violent turn, culminating in one of Poland's most notorious murders. Zuzanna Maksimiuk was, on the surface, a typical teenager, curious, intelligent, and creative. She had a strong passion for literature and poetry, and even published a collection of poems under the pseudonym Maria Goniewicz. Her writing often reflected a darker, introspective side, and she was known to have a sharp intellect and a desire to express herself artistically. Friends and acquaintances saw her as articulate and thoughtful, and her teachers noted her potential as a writer. Zuzanna mainly grew up with her mother, as her father was absent for much of her early childhood. She reconnected with him during her teenage years, but their renewed relationship was short-lived as he passed away not long after. This loss profoundly affected Zuzanna, and she later cited it as a catalyst for her pursuit of poetry. In an interview, she mentioned that her own end of the world led her to seek a form of self-expression, resulting in her first poem, Longings. Zuzanna's mother, Katarzyna Maksimiuk, was a highly respected academic and history professor at the University of Natural Sciences and Humanities in Siedlce, a small city located less than 100 kilometers from Warsaw. Known for her intelligence and dedication to her field, Katarzyna was admired by colleagues and students alike, earning a reputation as a knowledgeable and diligent educator. Her professional life was marked by stability and achievement, making her daughter's actions all the more shocking to those who knew the family. Katarzyna was seen as a supportive and attentive parent who encouraged Zuzanna's academic and artistic pursuits, recognizing her daughter's talent and ambition. She likely saw Zuzanna's rebellious streak and creative expression as traits that could lead her to success in life, given the right guidance. However, she might not have fully grasped the depth of her daughter's emotional struggles and darker inclinations. This tragic disconnect underscores the difficulty many parents face when trying to bridge the gap between adolescent rebellion and serious psychological issues. Kamil was, in many ways, the opposite of Zuzanna. While Zuzanna was outspoken, creative, and often rebellious, Kamil was quiet, reserved, and unassuming. He lacked her intense ambition and bold defiance, often coming across as subdued and compliant. Zuzanna's commanding personality seemed to fill a gap in Kamil's life, giving him a sense of direction and excitement that he hadn't found on his own. He came from a stable, middle-class family. His parents, Agnieszka and Jerzy, were regarded as loving and supportive, though they reportedly held high expectations for their son. Jerzy, a prison service officer, was known to be demanding and strict, while Kamil's mother, Agnieszka, a Russian language teacher, was warm and caring but firm in upholding her principles. Friends and neighbors saw them as attentive parents who were deeply invested in their son's well-being and future. Kamil and Zuzanna met in high school, where they were in the same class. In early 2014, during their second year, Zuzanna and Kamil began to grow closer after sitting next to each other and having a long conversation. Kamil was fascinated by Zuzanna, a girl who was seen as an outsider at school, treated others with a sense of superiority, and evoked mixed feelings. Her interests revolved around death and depression. She listened to heavy music, dressed in black, wrote poetry, and smoked marijuana. Her poetry was well regarded, winning her several awards, including one from the town's mayor. These achievements further strengthened her belief in her superiority over others. As Zuzanna developed a closer friendship with Kamil, she had just gone through a breakup with a girlfriend. She openly identified as a lesbian. Her relationship with Ola, who was a few years younger, had been very turbulent. During their time together, Ola's academic performance declined. She started skipping school and even ran away from home once. One day, Ola's parents caught her and Zuzana in a compromising situation. This would not have been particularly shocking, except for the fact that Zuzana was 18 at the time, while Ola was 14, which is illegal under Polish law. Zuzana was charged with engaging in sexual relations with a minor and was brought to court. Zuzana was prohibited from seeing Ola, which caused her to withdraw into herself and begin writing even more poetry. During this difficult time, she grew closer to Camille. It's unclear whether Camille fell in love with her or was merely fascinated by her. For Zuzana, however, their relationship was purely platonic, as she was not bisexual. Meanwhile, it is said that high school students submitted a petition requesting Zuzana's removal from the school. The document was written in very professional, formal language, suggesting that the initiative may have come from parents or teachers who felt that they themselves shouldn't take such decisive action against a young student. However, the school administration was reluctant to take such drastic measures, so Zuzana's mother was called in and advised to transfer her daughter to another school. This is how Zuzana ended up at Amelia Plater High School, located just across the street. Since Zuzana and Camille could no longer meet during classes or in the school hallways, Camille began skipping school more frequently. From a well-organized, diligent student, he transformed into someone more like Zuzana. He started skipping classes, dressing in black, and his academic performance declined significantly. Camille's parents were alarmed by this change, but at first, they tried talking to him, as they had always had a good relationship with him, and he had never caused any disciplinary issues before. These conversations with his parents did little to help. Camille began to openly rebel. He feared his parents were trying to separate him from Zuzana, who had become the most important person in his life. Finally, his parents decided to ground him and enforce stricter rules at home. Camille's mother even compared Zuzana to a one-person cult that had pulled their son away from his family and completely altered his values. The teenagers' relationship deepens, and in the summer, they go together to the Opener Festival, where they meet Martin and Linda from Poznan. The new friends spend their time together partying and smoking marijuana. Zuzana and Camille fully immerse themselves in a sense of freedom, music, and readily available drugs. After the summer, they return to the gray reality of everyday life. The trip brought them significantly closer together. Zuzana worries she might receive a suspended sentence due to the situation with Ola, so she tries to improve her image and dedicates more time to studying. However, she quickly falls back into her old habits. Camille also starts skipping classes, which terrifies his parents, especially since he is in his final year. They threaten him with no money for his 18th birthday and a complete ban on going out. Camille complains to Zuzana, and they both come to the conclusion that they need to do something. They don't want to be controlled. Freedom and their friendship are the most important things to them, despite Camille's parents' attempts to restrict it. Since they both have dark interests, they spend most of their time together at Zuzana's house, where they are often alone. They watch various films, captivated by their relationship and the feeling that it's just the two of them against the world, against parents, teachers, and other students. One of Zuzana's favorite films is American Psycho, which tells the story of a psychopathic murderer, along with natural-born killers, the tale of a couple traveling the country committing brutal crimes. Probably inspired by the film, Zuzana comes up with an idea to get rid of Camille's parents, who are trying to control his life and prevent him from continuing his friendship with her. Camille's parents had recently moved into a new valuable home, which Zuzana sees as a potential source of future benefits. In the event of their deaths, Camille would be the sole heir to their estate. The funds obtained, for example, from selling the house, could provide the pair of friends with a comfortable and affluent life. Reportedly, Camille did not object to Zuzana's macabre idea. Instead, he yielded to her persuasion, and together they decided to murder his parents. They devised a plan to avoid detection. Zuzana, a poet gaining increasing popularity, with fan pages dedicated to her poetry and even musical interpretations of her work appearing, decided to use her growing fame as part of their alibi. She had already published her own poetry collection, and the plan was for her and Camille to travel to Krakow for an organized fan meeting, then return to Biała Podlaska, their hometown, at night to commit the crime, and afterward return to Krakow. However, the plan had a significant flaw. Neither of them owned a car, which would make quick travel between cities difficult. That's when Zuzana came up with the idea to contact friends from the opener festival, as Marcin had a car and could potentially help them. She offers him 5,000 zloty, which is around $1,230, to pick them up from Warsaw and drive them to Krakow. On December 12, 2014, Camille and Zuzana travel from their town to Warsaw, a trip that takes about 2.5 hours by bus. In one of the shopping centers, they buy rubber gloves and search for painters' aprons, as Zuzana wants to prepare for the murder of Camille's parents. She wants to stage the murder of Camille's parents in a style similar to the scene from American Psycho, in which the main character kills his first victim while wearing a raincoat. Additionally, Zuzana comes up with the idea of buying shoes in different sizes to leave footprints that would make it difficult for the police to link them to the crime. Marcin arrives in Warsaw to pick up Camille and Zuzana, but unexpectedly brings along his girlfriend Linda, which complicates their plan from the outset. Just before reaching Krakow, Zuzana realizes they are significantly delayed and will miss the concert that was supposed to serve as an additional alibi. The concert had replaced the previously planned poetry evening and fan meeting with Zuzana. Given the delay, she invents an excuse, claiming she forgot her laptop, which she supposedly needs because it contains her poems and all the necessary documents for the fan meeting. Justifying this, she convinces Marcin that they need to return to Biała Podlaska. Marcin is unhappy with the idea of going back, but Zuzana doubles the offer, promising him an additional 5,000 zloty for the extended trip, to which Marcin eventually agrees. Meanwhile, Camille sends a text message to his mother, saying they have arrived safely in Krakow and promising to attend school as usual on Monday. This message was intended as proof, in case the police checked phone records, to suggest that Camille was indeed in Krakow. They arrive in Biała Podlaska at night. Zuzana gives Marcin the address of Camille's parents' house instead of her own, and she and Camille head inside, explaining to Marcin and Linda that they'll be a while as they want to freshen up. Camille unlocks the door with a key, leaving no sign of forced entry. He then locks his parents' dog in a downstairs room to prevent any disturbance. Together with Zuzana, he goes upstairs to his parents' bedroom. They decide that Camille will take care of his mother and Zuzana will handle his father. Standing over Camille's sleeping parents, they count down 3, 2, 1, and begin stabbing his defenseless parents with knives that Zuzana had taken from her grandfather, an avid hunter. Camille's father, being a well-built man, resists. Seeing that Zuzana is struggling, Camille joins the attack on his father. During the chaos, his mother seizes the opportunity and manages to escape from the bedroom. She crawls across the floor and down the stairs, reaching outside, where she begins calling for help. Noticing that Mrs. Agnieszka has escaped, Camille rushes downstairs, drags her back inside, and slits her throat. Then returns upstairs, where Zuzana is still struggling with Mr. Jersey. In desperation, Zuzana bites his hand, leaving a full impression of her teeth, which later begins to worry her, as it indicates left DNA and bite marks. After Camille's father dies from numerous stab wounds, the pair decides to cut off his hand. However, they were not prepared for such a step. They didn't have a saw or an axe, so they ultimately abandon the idea. They leave the house without locking the door. In the darkness, they fail to notice a large bloodstain on the wall near the entrance, left by Camille's mother. When they approach the car, they discover that Marcin and Linda are nowhere to be found. They likely lost patience and left. This situation forces Zuzana and Camille to turn on their phones to contact Marcin and Linda, which causes their phones to log their location in Biała Podlaska. After a brief exchange, their friends return to Camille's house. Zuzana and Camille get into the car, covered in blood. Shocked, Marcin and Linda ask what happened. Zuzana and Camille explain that they got hungry, found some meat in the fridge, and got blood on themselves while preparing it. This explanation doesn't really convince Marcin and Linda, but they still decide to drive them to Krakow. During the trip, Camille remains silent, and at one point, Zuzana breaks down in tears. During a stop at a gas station, after smoking marijuana, Zuzana says to Marcin, "We killed them." Marcin, given the previous events, decides to ignore this statement. He likely already sensed that something terrible had happened, and now, hearing Zuzana's confession, he was in shock. His instinct for self-preservation kicked in. So without asking questions, he drove Zuzana and Camille to Krakow as previously arranged. The awareness that he was transporting two murderers and, in a sense, helping conceal a crime might have paralyzed him with fear and prevented him from thinking clearly. They arrived in Krakow at dawn and went to visit a friend of Zuzana's who lived there. When the friends saw them covered in blood, Zuzana explained that they had been attacked, beaten, and robbed at the train station. That same day, December 14th, in the afternoon, Zuzana's friend receives news that Camille's parents are dead. She learns this from mutual acquaintances who know that Camille is currently staying with her. When the friend informs Camille and Zuzana of Camille's parents' deaths, they don't appear either surprised or saddened. Zuzana's friend begins connecting the dots, especially when the media reports that it was a brutal murder. She shares her suspicions with another friend and then reports the matter to the police. Officers arrive at her apartment and arrest Camille and Zuzana. The police in Biała Podlaska had already determined that there was no break-in at the house, and the dog did not bark, which suggested that the perpetrator was someone known to the family and had a key. The first suspect, therefore, became Camille. Evidence at the crime scene indicated the involvement of two people who apparently had an emotional connection to the victims, as indicated by the number of wounds inflicted. Marcin and Linda, upon learning about the crime, go to the police themselves and hand over the blood-stained tools they found in their car's trunk, left there by Camille and Zuzana. During the first day of interrogations, Zuzana states that if she had to do it again, she would choose a different weapon because a knife leaves too many traces, which likely contributed to their detection. She also regrets that they were unable to buy raincoats, which, in her opinion, would have given the whole situation a more cinematic feel. Camille, on the other hand, remains silent, appearing dazed. Only after a few weeks does he begin to grasp the gravity of what he has done. The case quickly gains media attention, and after a few months, the trial begins. In court, Zuzana behaves with visible satisfaction, enjoying being the center of attention, talking a lot, and frequently smiling. Camille, in contrast, is withdrawn and says very little. In the courtroom, Camille's relatives are present, along with Zuzana's mother, who admits that she was focused on her work and paid little attention to her daughter's life. She was aware that Zuzana caused trouble, but never once during the trial expressed condemnation of her actions. She hired the best lawyers for her daughter, and her demeanor suggested she was more concerned about the interruption of Zuzana's career than about the tragedy that had befallen Camille's family. Camille's family completely cuts ties with him. The prosecution files a request that Camille not inherit his parents' house, which the court approves in a brief 10-minute hearing. The house was only sold in 2016 at a price 3 times lower than its value, as it was difficult to find a buyer for a home where such a tragedy had occurred. The prosecutor, in demanding a life sentence, argued that the young age of the teenagers, along with their expressed remorse and regret, should not be considered mitigating factors. They are not worthy of living in a normal society, emphasized Lydia Sobiestianchuk-Jasim. The murder was extremely brutal, and the defendants showed no pity for the people they killed, she added. In December 2015, Zuzana and Camille are sentenced to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of applying for early release after 20 years. Both the defendants' defense attorneys and the prosecution appeal this sentence. In April 2016, the appellate court rejects both appeals and upholds the sentence of 25 years in prison, with eligibility for conditional release after serving 20 years. The psychologists and psychiatrists who examined them quickly reached a conclusion regarding Zuzana. After 4 weeks of observation, they diagnosed her with narcissistic and antisocial personality traits, a tendency toward aggression, lack of guilt, and an inability to experience emotions. Camille's case was more challenging. 2 months of tests did not reveal dependent or antisocial personality traits. During the examinations, he admitted, he felt that someone else was standing over his parents' bed, across from Zuzana. He wasn't there. As for his mother, he caught up to her and ran the knife twice across her throat so that she wouldn't suffer. In prison, Camille reads a lot and studies, eventually passing his high school exams, while Zuzana continues to write poetry. One of her poems wins an award in a national prison poetry competition. Zuzana and Camille do not keep in contact with each other. This tragic case of Zuzana and Camille serves as a chilling reminder of the consequences of unchecked emotions and influences. If you found this video informative, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more true crime content. Let us know your thoughts on the case in the comments. What do you think could have prevented such a tragic outcome? Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and keep seeking the truth.